You picture yourself under the lights, the ring announcer stretching your name across 3 syllables, 40,000 people screaming before you've thrown a single punch. Here's what actually happens on the way there. It starts in a gym with a busted heavy bag and a fan that doesn't work. Nobody's cheering. You're 11 years old, or you're 26 and starting late, and you're about to find out what this sport really costs. So what is professional boxing, actually? It's not one thing. There's the 4-round prospect fighting on the undercard of a Tuesday night card in a half-empty casino ballroom. There's the 6-round journeyman who takes fights on 2 weeks' notice because he needs the paycheck. There's the world-ranked contender, maybe 1 or 2 per weight class per generation, fighting for titles on pay-per-view. And then there's the tiny handful of superstars whose names you already know. Almost everyone who turns pro lives in the first 2 categories. Most never leave them. What does it actually take to start? You don't need an amateur career, legally. In most US states, you can apply for a professional license with 0 amateur fights as long as you pass a physical, a neurological exam, and pay the licensing fee. But here's the catch: nobody puts in the beginner guides. Promoters won't touch you without one. An amateur record is how a matchmaker knows you won't get hurt in round 1 and make the whole card look bad. So the real path starts with years of amateur bouts first, usually starting in your early teens, sometimes younger. Gym dues run somewhere in the range of $50 to $150 a month. Add wraps, gloves, headgear, a mouthguard, and travel to tournaments, and a serious amateur career can run you a few $1,000s a year before you've earned a single purse. Is that expensive? Compared to some sports? No. Compared to what you get back, often, yes. Now the real timeline. Most fighters who eventually turn pro have been in a gym since childhood or their early teens. You'll spend 6 to 10 years as an amateur if you're doing it seriously, racking up anywhere from 20 to over 100 fights, learning to lose before you learn to win. How many amateurs actually turn pro? Nobody tracks this precisely, but coaches and boxing writers who've watched thousands of fighters put it at under 1% for boxers with fewer than 20 amateur bouts. The odds improve, but only somewhat, for those who log 50 or more. Turning pro usually happens somewhere between 18 and 24. Your first few years as a pro are 4-round fights, sometimes 6, against opponents your team handpicks to keep your record clean. This is called being fed, and it's normal. It's also where most careers quietly end. Fighters get injured, get discouraged, or simply can't get matched onto enough cards to make a living, and they walk away in their mid to late 20s having never sniffed a ranked opponent. Let's talk about the real money, because this is where the fantasy breaks hardest. How much do professional boxers actually make? At the entry level, 4- and 6-round prospects typically earn somewhere between $1,000 and $4,000 per fight, and most fight only 2 to 4 times a year while they're building a record. Do the math on that, and a lot of new pros are making less in a year than a full-time minimum wage job. Once you climb to journeyman or regional contender level, purses rise to somewhere around $8,000 a fight, which sounds better until you remember your trainer takes 10%, your manager takes another 15 to 33%, and you're paying for your own camp, sparring partners, and sometimes your own medical tests. Multiple salary surveys in the US put the median annual income for a working professional boxer somewhere between $30,000 and $45,000 a year, and that's for the fighters who are actually getting booked regularly. In the UK, one longtime boxing fan cited a national press figure of roughly £17,000 a year as the average pro boxer's income, low enough that most hold a second job. Now, the exception, because it exists and it matters, a handful of names at the very top, fighters like Canelo Alvarez, can earn tens of millions of dollars in a single fight, and the biggest pay-per-view stars have made over $100 million for one night. That is not the expectation. That is the lottery ticket sitting on top of an industry where most participants are working paycheck to paycheck between fights that happen a few times a year. The real odds are just as blunt. Boxing has no players' union, no league minimum salary, no guaranteed contract, and no salary cap protecting the lower ranks the way some team sports do. You are paid per fight, not per year, which means an injury, a bad loss, or simply not getting a call from a promoter can mean months with zero income. Estimates put the number of active licensed professional boxers worldwide somewhere in the tens of thousands, and only a few hundred of those, at most, are ever ranked inside the top 15 of a weight class where real money starts to show up. Injury is part of the job description, not a rare event. Repeated head trauma is a documented long-term risk of the sport, and it's part of why several state athletic commissions now require baseline brain imaging before they'll license you at all. Careers are short. Most fighters who don't make real money by their late 20s or early 30s retire, often with lingering physical costs and, according to multiple accounts from inside the sport, very little in savings. Here are two paths that start in the exact same gym. Fighter 1 turns pro at 20, wins his first 8 fights against hand-picked opponents, gets a step up in Fight 9, loses on a bad decision in a close fight, and can't get another call for 8 months because promoters see the loss on paper and move on to someone else. He takes a warehouse job to cover rent, keeps training on weekends, and by 26 he's fought 11 times in 6 years and is done. Fighter 2, same gym, same coach, turns pro at 19, wins his first 12, gets signed to a promotional deal that puts him on television undercards twice a year, cracks the regional top 10 by 24, and by 27 is making close to 6 figures in his best fight year, still years away from a title shot, and still one bad night from losing it all. Same talent level walking in the door, different matchmaking, different promotional backing, different luck with the judges on one specific night. So who is this actually for? It's for people who can genuinely absorb repeated physical punishment as a normal part of their week, not an occasional risk. It's for people who can tolerate years of irregular, unpredictable income before, if ever, it becomes livable. It's for people with a coach and a gym willing to actually develop them, because talent without the right team rarely gets seen. It's not for someone chasing the highlight reel of the one-in-a-generation superstar, and it's not for someone who needs financial stability in their 20s. If you're doing this only for the money, the math doesn't support it for the overwhelming majority of the people who try. If you're doing it because you'd rather test yourself in that ring than sit outside it wondering, that's a different, more honest reason, and it's the one that actually sustains people through the losing months. You pictured the lights, the crowd, your name in 3 syllables. Now you know what's underneath it. A gym with a busted heavy bag, a fan that doesn't work, 6 to 10 years of learning to lose, and a career that pays most of the people in it, somewhere around a warehouse job salary, if it pays them at all. A tiny few make it to the lights. Almost everyone else makes it to the gym, and stays there anyway.